Hello, so this is the second screencast about non-parametric statistics, but we're focusing on more modern methods using so-called resampling. Now, we use non-parametric statistics when, for a variety of reasons, we're not happy or able to use a parametric test because the sample's very small. We're concerned about the assumptions of the parametric test being very poorly met, and so the statistics are not going to be valid. The p-values can't be trusted. Or indeed, sometimes it might be a design where there is no familiar statistical test, or that we don't have a package that can compute it. And so we turn to so-called resampling methods, which are very popular, become much more popular in recent years. They've been used a lot in combination with the growth of data sets, say from neuroimaging, where massive numbers of observations are potentially available, all the different voxels in the brain scan, and so on and so forth. So it's really important to say that there's a strong link here with the idea of the sampling distribution of a test statistic. So you should familiarize yourself with that concept. It's a very basic concept in statistics. So in traditional statistics, what we do is we have some data and we compute a test score, a statistic, a t-test, an f-test, rho for Pearson's rho for correlation. So that statistic is calculated according to a formula, and the originators of it worked out under the null hypothesis and certain other assumptions, the parametric assumptions, what the distribution of that statistic would look like under the null hypothesis if you were able to repeat the experiment many times, a sampling distribution of the test statistic under the null hypothesis. And then you compare your actual statistic on your set of data with this null hypothesis sampling distribution, and you make a judgment of whether the value in your data is too extreme, has such a low probability that it's unlikely to have come from a sampling distribution generated from data that conform to the null hypothesis. That's the basic idea. And what we're doing here is saying, well, we don't have a trustworthy sampling distribution, don't know what it is for our statistic, or our data are so not conforming so strongly to the assumptions by which the standard sampling distribution was calculated, the formula for it, the maths of it. And so we're concerned, we can't trust it. So what we do, we numerically essentially generating a sampling distribution based on our data and the statistic we want to use. And that's the essence of what we're doing. So it's very tightly coupled with sampling distribution. And there are different approaches. We're going to talk about randomization, and that's essentially related to, it's a version of permutation. Randomize the data in different ways to generate the sampling distributions by resampling from our data many times, and we're going to contrast that with a different form of randomization in a later screencast when we talk about bootstrapping. So there are two different ways we randomize. One, we get a randomization or a permutation test, which is essentially permuting is going in. We've got very small numbers of possible data combinations. We're going to do all the possible permutations of the data. In randomization, there are too many to do permutations, so we just do a random subset of all the permutations. And then in bootstrapping, we do a different kind of randomization. You'll see more about that in a separate screencast. So there's plenty of software resources out there. We're going to use different programs to generate examples. There's actually some free software called Statistics 101, which has been generated to do resampling. It's actually very easy to learn, very simple, and we have some examples for that, and the code links will be in the descriptions where they occur. I'm also going to use Matlab, my preferred statistical computational software. And there are some statisticians who've written books, have produced some resampling stuff. Howell, always reliable. This link has some stats pages, and you look for the section on randomization and permutation tests. He's also written his own Visual Basic program, and more recently he's been upgrading to do stuff in R. As I said, I'm going to use mostly Matlab code, and you can use any kind of language that you're familiar with to do and generate resampling yourself. R, Excel, stats 101, etc., etc. So, to start off with randomization tests, here, as I've already said, we're going to generate a large sampling distribution of our test statistic using many random resamples from our data. So we need large numbers, typically 5,000, 10,000 times we're going to resample the data randomly. This is as if we were running the experiment lots of different times, which is the theoretical sampling distribution that statisticians have worked out for standard test statistics. We're numerically generating it from our data by random resampling. Now, for randomization tests, the key thing is we're essentially trying to remove any effect in the data. So we're generating the sampling distributions that you would get were the null hypothesis to be true. And it turns out a simple way to remove any effect that might be in your data is to randomize without replacing across the whole data set, so that it guarantees that there is no effect in your data. So it makes it as if H0, the null hypothesis, were true. We'll see several examples of that. In this screencast, we'll just have the first example, and then some other screencasts will have other examples. And then we compute a statistic on our data and compare it with the artificial sampling distribution to see how extreme our data are with respect to that null hypothesis sampling distribution. It'll all become clear, hopefully, in these examples. So here's the first example, number 1. We're imagining it's a one-way within subjects design. Subjects in the experiment have each got a score for variable x and variable y. And so if we were happy to do parametric tests, we would do a paired t-test to see if there was a difference between x and y. And if we wanted to use one of our rank-based non-parametric statistics that we talked about in an earlier screencast, you would use the Wilcoxon signed ranks test, one of the first ones I learnt about as an undergraduate. And I've created some code on both stats 101 and Matlab with these names, these file names, and they will be available in the description below, which carry out the resampling randomization tests in this example. As he took the data from Howell's chapter on this in chapter 18, this is an old study by Hoagland et al., which was looking at, in a very small sample, the role of beta endorphins in relation to stress. So they were interested in testing whether beta endorphin levels rose in stressful situations. So they only had a small sample. Back in '83, this was doubtless a very expensive procedure. And so they tested the patients twice, once 12 hours before some surgery they were going to have, and then that was 12 hours before, and then 10 minutes before the surgery, under the hypothesis that the second observation, just before the surgery, would be at a point of greater stress, and therefore they could look at whether beta endorphins levels rose. So these are the data at the 12-hour point before and a 10-minute point, and these are the differences from the 19 participants. Straightforward set of data. So I'm just going to tabulate them a different way. So I've called them X and Y. This is the well before, just before. So this is X1 and Y1 from subject 1, and the difference is plus 10. Let's just go back and check. So the beta endorphin levels have risen by 10 on this. I can't remember what F stands for. It's a fraction of a mole per millimeter. Okay, so here we go. We're subtracting the beta endorphin levels at 12 hours before from the beta endorphin levels at 10 minutes before, and we get a plus 10 difference, 20 minus 10, and we've done it for all 19 data points, and there's the data. And I've labeled this column as diffs. These are the differences. And if you plot them out, you'll see they're nearly all positive. There are a few small and negative ones, but there's a definite tendency for the differences to be positive. So the question is this significant evidence of an increase? It certainly looks like it is, but you can see the distribution is very skewed. It's a very small sample, so we might not trust the p-values you got from the parametric test. So here we have the data laid out. and these are the differences for the 19 participants from the Hoagland et al. Data. And actually, to show you that all we're interested in really is the differences, I've arbitrarily made up some other data points that have the same differences, but they are not the same as in the Hoagland et al. Don't know why I really did that. It just shows that we're focusing in this example exclusively on the differences, because that's what we're interested in, is the difference different from 0. We're expecting it to be positive because of the way we subtracted x from y from x. I'll flip round x and y here as well. So what's the question we're asking about diffs? We're asking, is there a majority of diffs which fall one side or other of 0? Are they mostly positive, mostly negative? And we could ask this in one or two-tailed version. We have a one-tailed hypothesis that in this case the difference is positive. X, as represented here, is greater than y. So the question is, how by randomization can we remove any real effect that there might be in the data? So we're going to use a randomization method to ensure that in all the resamples we're going to generate, the null hypothesis will work. There are no differences. So what if we randomly flip the sign of differences, the differences score, so that each score had a 50-50 chance of being positive or negatively? Alternatively, we could put this, we're going to swap randomly the x and y scores over. So for some subjects, it might be this way around, the correct way, but for equally likely, with equal probability, we would have some subjects where we swap x and y over. That would guarantee that there was no difference, because if there is a difference, then we're removing it by putting, on average, an equal number of subjects the right way around and the wrong way around, which would therefore cancel each other out. So here for our data is a single randomization resample. Here now our diffs, we flip these round. In this particular subject is the opposite way around, so we get a -10 and so on, generating a set of 19 participants, pseudo participants, pseudo observations. That's our first resample. Done in the way I said, the diffs value is positive and negative with equal probability. And then we can do it, in this case, 10,000 times. There's the original. That's that first randomization, and we do it over and over again. The original data are mostly positive, and each resample has roughly 50% positive and negative, so that they would definitely have removed any effect that might be there in the original. So we're swapping x and y values across the data set to create each resample, randomly assigning positive and negative differences. And then we've got to calculate a statistic of interest for each of the many resamples we've generated. What might that statistic be? Well, we can choose any one that's sensible. So here's a couple of obvious ones. We might say the proportion of positive differences. Well, what's our expectation under H0? Well, we know it's a half because it's random. On average, there'll be random variation, and we can then express our observed proportion of positive differences against the random resample distribution. This would be quite an inefficient way to do it, because we could actually, with fairly simple maths, work out what the distribution of this statistic would be. So we're going to concentrate on a different example, which is much more hard to work out the underlying distribution under the null hypothesis, the median difference. So what would the median difference of the scores between the two time points be under H0? So we can resample that distribution. And clearly we're expecting the median difference under H0 true to be around 0. There would be no difference. And we can test our observed median against that. So we're going to generate our resampling distribution and test our median in the real data against, see where it lies in that resampling distribution of the median under H0. And we can even calculate a p-value from our resampling distribution. So here is what it looked like. This is the actual output in Stats 101. The median difference in our original sample was +6. The median is at the midpoint. It's the value of a set of data at the midpoint. So if you have 101 participants, say, for example, it would be the score of the 51st. You put them in order and you take the midpoint, the person at the midpoint. So here's the resampled distribution of the medians when there is no effect, because in each resample we've removed any effect. and we see that 6, there would be a very small probability of the randomly samples having medians as big as 6 or bigger. Hardly any do. Appear to be a handful above 6 here. And similarly, there are very few, or actually none, in this plot, in these 10,000, that are as small or smaller than -6. So the p-value here is very low. We're confident using this method that there was a significant difference, that the endorphin levels just before surgery are higher than they were 12 hours earlier. And that's the end of the first screencast.